Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back to Comedian MTG. My name is Ian. So we're going to be doing something a little atypical today. What we're going to be doing, instead of going over any particular top 16, top 10, anything like that from the past month, what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually be going and looking at every tournament that I could find that was over 50 players. So we have 8 tournaments to look at today, and one of the things I am most excited about in these 8 tournaments is the fact that there's no consistency with all of these tournaments. This meta is looking pretty wide open right now. There's definitely some archetypes that are doing a little bit consistently better than other archetypes, but realistically, people are trying a bunch of new stuff. There's a lot of experimentation going on. There's a lot of new decks going on. So let's just jump right into some of these and go over some of the analysis of these tournaments, talk about some really interesting highlights. As I mentioned, we're not going to dive too deep into some of these archetypes. You know, if you want any more detailed stuff, we might go into a few as we go through these tournaments. But the idea is to get a large overview of all the stuff that is being talked about, try to synthesize some analysis from the stuff we're going to look at, and then kind of go from there. Long story short, there's going to be some really cool stuff to look at, so let's jump right into it. Make sure to hit that like button, the subscribe button if you like videos like this, and if you want to support the channel, check out patreon.com/comedianmtg, where any help helps to keep this channel going and growing. It's been a crazy month for cEDH, but tournaments are still going. We still have a lot of crazy stuff going on, and the new format looks pretty sweet, so let's check out some stuff. So first is the AGL 10K at Penrose Park. Now, you may have seen me talk about some of these videos on last week's episode of the Mind Sculptors, or I guess it would be this week's episode of the Mind Sculptors. But, you know, I'm going to definitely go into some detail here. Now, this tournament was won by Roxai, and then we do have, I'm noticing on EDH Top 16, a few more unknown commander bots kind of coming up. So the second place list was 4-0 forward here, which means we can't get access to it. But we do have a view of some of the other stuff in the meta, which is pretty nice. So we do have a 3-0-2 reported record here for our winning player, which would be a little bit peculiar seeing as other people are, supposedly have more rounds of Magic played. We have one person with the finals here with the 3-2-1. So I'm wondering if our winning Roxai list maybe got a bye in the tournament, because that's usually what happens when you don't see a winning, when you don't see the appropriate amount of rounds show up. We also have Dargo Silas up here in the top cuts, which is definitely a list, and this is something you're going to be hearing a little bit more consistently, right? Which is a lot of these decks that we maybe thought were fully dead in the water are not as much, right? So we have Dargo Silas, a deck that losing Dockside definitely hurt quite a lot for. Losing Jewel Lotus hurt a lot for as well. But this list is here, and it made the top 4 of the first tournament after the ban, right? So we got some interesting stuff here with Obnx. We got a lot of these like Dargo sacrifice synergies. You know, they're still doing, I guess, is this still an ad nause? So it's not an ad nause deck, right? So that's definitely something kind of interesting about the archetype. No, Bolus of Citadel or anything like that either. No Necropotence lines. It's a breach deck, and it definitely hyper focuses on winning with like a lot of these super sacrificey Dargo combos, right? Very much away from the Turbo Naz style game plan. Now you still have like Thoracle Consult as a potential win for this deck, but definitely doing a lot more of the like Bergy combos, the Pitiless Plunderer, the Ruthless Technomancer, all of those type of Dargo combos, using things like Disciple of Bolus to get a ton of value, and then going for infinite Dargo loops as the way to close the game out. So really cool to see this very, very different take on Silas Dargo here in the top 4 of this tournament for sure. Definitely doing some really cool, quirky stuff. No Nas, no Citadel, nothing like that to be seen, but just ripping cards off of Dargo and sending it for sure. We have our first Kenon appearance here. We have a Gyruda, Doom of Depths, which we got to click on because that one's very, very spicy. We have Hamster Love here with this Gyruda list. Super cool stuff. Absolutely chock full of even mana value clones. For those who don't know, Gyruda mills 4 and then allows you to play a even mana value spell for free out of the graveyard and not even play. It just puts them in, right? So anytime you have an even mana value clone, you just literally put it in, make another copy of Gyruda, and keep going down and down and down. Nightmare Shepherd does a very similar thing where when they die, makes them come back as 1/1 versions of itself. More trigger is there. If you get to a Thassa Deep Dwelling, it flickers the Gyruda. So this is a very all-in Gyruda variant of this archetype. And then it's also apparently winning with Mikaeus Triskelion lines, which is pretty spicy. We have a Kozilek in here to make sure you're not decking yourself. There is a Thoracle in here. I'm assuming this is just like a normal Thoracle consult potential. Oh no, there's not even a demonic consultation in this variant. This is probably one of the most turbo Gyruda lists I've ever seen this archetype. Oh, okay, so this tournament was. I'm wondering if that's some strange clerical error there with that one. But yeah, that seems that the Gyruda list, because the rest of the decks from this tournament don't have any banned cards in them, but for some reason that one did. So I'm not really sure what's up there. That might just be a reporting error from Top Deck site too, which has happened in the past, right? Like it happened with my my Urza list that I did not play, but I played Itali instead. So it's something that's happened before. But also, I guess, since we're not talking about Gyruda right now anymore, let's talk about Traz and the Infinite. This is a super wild commander, and it says it has the activated abilities of all artifacts in your graveyard. A card that definitely did get a lot of payoff for the fact that people don't have access to Docksides anymore because, boy, oh boy, this is nothing but artifacts, right? So this is an artifact necrotic ooze in the command zone, right? So the entire point of this deck is you have the classic Phyrexian Devourer Walking Ballista combos in here. You have Triskelion there as a backup as well. And then the rest of this deck is all like layered ways to turn your commander into a one-shot kill machine, which is super, super cool and super unique. It's really awesome to see that this commander was able to make a top 16 of an event right after the ban, right? So someone definitely pulling out all the stops here right away to turn Trazen into this murderous machine. I'm assuming there's like a Buried Alive line here somewhere as well. No, Buried Alive, interesting. So I guess it's oh no, it's Buried Alive. It's just the the Monty Python variant, which threw me off. And a lot of just crazy mono black stuff, wild different ways to protect your creatures in mono black. Kite Command, Eldrazi Confluence, Null Elemental Blast, wild and fun card here. Eldritch Immunity, good thing to protect your commander. And then a lot of different Insidious Dreams too, discarding cards and then top deck tutoring multiple times. Super cool stuff. Here from this Trazen list, you can also, it is worth noting, Mesmeric Orb, and I believe Basalt Monolith is in here as well, or is it not? Oh yeah, Basalt Monolith in here. Yeah, you can mill your whole library with that combo, which then obviously if you play your commander, you have every artifact in your deck available to you. There's just so many different layered ways for this deck to win that it'd be quite difficult to go over each and every one of them. But super cool deck here, and I would love to hear if our pilot of this deck had any interesting stuff to say about this list for sure after this analysis. But we have, a Malcolm deck right here too, Kess Malcolm, a deck that a lot of folks, are not really, we're expecting it to get hit, pretty bad because of the lack of Jewel Lotus and Mana Crypt. But here we have a Kess Malcolm list able to make top cut right away. We also have a Malcolm Timna list, another list that everyone kind of assumed got a little bit shot in the foot. We have more Roxai, a couple more Roxai here in the top 16, but definitely diverse stuff. We have Crom Timna still here in the top cuts, right? The deck is still doing its thing. This version definitely a little bit lighter on artifacts than traditionally speaking, right? No Crypt, no Jewel Lotus to be spoken of, but they're still trying to do the whole Mox Opal thing here in these Timna Crom lists, right? Doing a lot of stuff to still be as proactive as they can be. And Timna Crom definitely got hit, definitely is not as dominant as it was pre-ban, but it's still a contender, right? Like Blue Farm is still full of a lot of really good cards. It's just, kind of got brought down to everyone else's level for a little bit, which is pretty nice. Here's a 50-person event that we have, Commander Showdown 12. This is some interesting decks here. Now, there's some blue farms, right? That list was still able to do pretty well in this tournament, but there's some other stuff here in these top cuts as well. We have Magda, which was kind of proposed to be one of the cards and decks that, they lost Dockside, they lost Mana Crypt, but it wasn't hit too bad. We have a really cool Kodama to Vesh list, which I assumed would have been a combination that was hit pretty hard by the ban without losing a bunch of fast mana, but really cool stuff here with this Kodama Tevesh list. Having two giant big mana commanders in the zone, using some Blood Artist type effects, Forsaken Miner combos in here, really sweet stuff there. We have Eladamri Corvicdal that cheat in some big creatures, and then the mana value of this deck goes up and up. We have Druid of Purification just as a way to just blow a bunch of artifacts enchantments. This is a Protean Hulk list, so the Forsaken Miner loop that I just talked about with Blood Artist, a Sack Outlet, and Forsaken Miner. And then I guess what's the other piece? I assume it would be like a Warren Soul Trader, which I didn't. Okay, we do see the Warren Soul Trader. So like, yeah, Warren Soul Trader, Blood Artist, and Forsaken Miner is the Protean Hulk pile here because you target your opponent when you Blood Artist them. You also gain the life back that you lost for Soul Trader, and then use the treasure that you made from Soul Trader to bring back the Forsaken Miner because you are targeting an opponent with the Blood Artist ability. So cool stuff there. Really interesting kind of Hulk heavy Golgari list. Yeah, super wild stuff here. Things like Chittering Rats, which not really sure why you even have a card like this in here, but it's super cool stuff for sure. You got Yawgmoth in here, a lot of the classic black acceleration and greens creature tutors, a bunch of sacrifice outlets to get the Protean Hulk game plan online with Quest for Necropolis, which I've never seen in a deck before in cEDH. But I guess it is just a reanimate spell on an enchantment that gets better when you make landfalls, which with Kodama plans, pretty easy to do. So cool. We just have this like very intense green-black Protean Hulk list with two kind of off the beaten path commanders here, which is really, really cool. A lot of cool stuff in this one for sure. Things like Ophiomancer and stuff like that. Traditionally not very cEDH played cards. You know what time it is. Time to shout out ToamMagic.com. Tales of Adventure Magic. They will be at MagicCon Vegas if you want some of your singles and you want to pick it up at that event, as well as a number of other events, and get a wide selection, great cards with vendors who are allowed to order things online and pick them up at location. Check out ToamMagic.com. Use code comedian to get a percentage off your order. We gotta shout out. We gotta shout out the fact that there is, I mean, there's a post-ban Itali in here, right? Like, and which is fine, and the infamous Cruel Claw, which is super sick. And I mean, boy, oh boy, that's a Mrs. Bumbleflower list. Let's start with the Itali, right? Itali post-ban, still keeping in there. You know, a lot of the classic Itali stuff, still able to be present in this deck using Metamorphosis as one of the sack outlets. I'm curious to see if there is another non-food chain specific win con, but really we're just, I mean, you got breach lines, but not anything specific here. So this Itali deck really just relying on food chain as its main win condition, and then has the dual caster lines as backup. I'm assuming no dual caster mage as well. Oh no, here we have dual caster mage. Okay, so dual caster and stuff like that as the secondary win con here. There is the underscore goblin, and I'm wondering if there's a Cloudstone Curio still in this list, because that is still something you can loop with your commander, but it doesn't seem like there are any loops here with the underscore goblin. It's just here as a ramp piece. So here we have Itali, you know, having lost three pretty big pieces here with Dockside and with Jeweled Lotus and with Mana Crypt, but still able to make the top 16 of this tournament, which is very relieving as a deep Itali lover myself. Cool shout out for the last March of the Ents inclusion, very spicy with Itali. And yeah, I'm just happy the girl's still alive. Seething Song in the deck to give a little extra padding to the ramp plan, you know, a little bit lighter on the artifacts now. Definitely cool to see a Shamil the Inner Sun, making your Itali uncounterable, giving you some Discover 5 action, really sweet stuff. And then Blood Moon, able to once again be a part of the deck, and I think there's a Magus of the Moon as well. Yeah, so Blood Moon strategies kind of back in business. Really cool to see them here in this Itali list, and yeah, just happy to see this deck that I really love still competing in cEDH tournaments. Itali, long live the dinosaur. But let's talk about the spicy stuff for sure. Infamous RGU here. This is an infamous Cruel Claw list, and okay, we got three whole creatures in the deck, because let's just read Cruel Claw. Yeah, so when it deals combat damage to a player, has menace, so it's a menace 3/3, kind of pretty good to get in. You can exile cards from top of your library till you exile a non-land, and you may cast that card by discarding a card rather than paying its cost. So basically, you hit your opponents, and then you flip into some really crazy big stuff. This is a Worldfire deck. Holy cow. Yeah, Rise of the Eldrazi here, Decree of Annihilation. This is a 91 land. No way that a 91 land deck made the top 16 of this tournament. No way. That's awesome. That is so cool. Did you put 91 unique lands in here too? That takes some oh no, okay. But only 26 lands out of 91 were non-unique lands. And the LED, this is a straight up crazy. Wow. Okay, so this is a straight up 8 non-land permanent deck, including LED, which is so wild to me. Got the new Emrakul in here, paying 6 colorless if you madness it out, but then also takes all the creatures in the battlefield. Wow, this is crazy. This is a straight up, I cannot believe this, a straight up 9 or 8 non-land permanent deck. Holy cow. I thought this was going to be spicy when I looked at it, and this was way more spicy. I cannot believe this deck actually top cutted. That's so awesome. 91. What is their record at the end of this tournament? Okay, so they went 1, 2, and 2, but still, that is so super cool. Yeah, I have nothing but good stuff to say there for that one. So that's sweet. Congrats to our Cruel Claw pilot here. That's some wild stuff. We have LocusCreation here with Big Booty Bunny. This is wild. Okay, so this is a Bumbleflower deck that has food chain payoffs in it. Eternal Scourge is in here with no Mist Hologriffin. Is this a food chain deck though? It is a food chain deck. Okay, so there is a food chain combo in this Mist Bumbleflower deck. I guess it is worth noting that food chain and Mist Bumbleflower do work. So yes, you do give counters or you give cards to your opponent, but if you have some sort of silence effect or something like that, you are able to do the second ability, which is like if it's the second time you cast a spell this turn, but it's not this turn. It's the second time this ability is resolved. So if you get rid of Miss Bumbleflower, you are able to trigger this ability also. I can't believe I'm talking about Miss Bumbleflower. So whenever you cast a spell, an opponent draws a card and you put a counter on a creature. So this is a major downside for this card. I'm assuming this is a very political deck, or you don't actually cast Miss Bumbleflower so you're winning the game. But then if it's the second time, you draw 2 cards, right? So basically, as long as you have the food chain thing going and some way to protect your wins, I'm assuming, once again, you're able to make infinite creature mana and then cast the thing you're casting from exile, trigger Bumbleflower, give someone else a card, and then cast it and then draw yourself 2 cards. So I'm assuming you're not trying to deck your opponents. I think you're just trying to get it until you hit something like a Walking Ballista, which I'd assume, right? You have your Grand Abolishers here to stop that. Oh, you've got like infinite mana outlets here with Thrasios and Kenon and stuff. Kami of the Whispered Hopes, which is, it's very funny because it works well with Bumbleflower. You have Emil lines with Derevi. This deck is absolutely all over the place. It's wild. It's super cool though. This is super cool. So I guess if you deal with the Emil Derevi stuff and then get to an Eternal Witness, I guess you can cast spells over and over again. You have a Fathom Mage, which basically means every time you cast your first spell in a turn, you give someone else a card, but you give yourself a card too. Yeah, Miss Bumbleflower taking wins in this cEDH tournament. Very slim artifact package. We're using stuff like Cryptolith, right? Wow, this deck is wild. We got Soul Cauldron stuff. Yeah, all right. This is a Miss Bumbleflower cEDH deck. Super sweet to see a deck like this make a top cut. I mean, you technically got an outlet in the zone, and you got a lot of crazy ways to get a win when you get that kind of stuff going. So yeah, Mrs. Bumbleflower for the win here in this top cut. Apart from that, we're still seeing some Sisei lists who are making top cuts too, right? We talked about how Atraxa is probably on a bit of a comeback. So you see one here, Tivit on a bit of a comeback, right? We still have Thrasios Timna Crom in here, Kenon up in here in these top tables, another Timna Thrasios. So we're starting to see that Timna Thras and Timna Crom definitely popping up. There are some ROG size around for these tournaments, but not in this particular event. And then yeah, some crazy stuff like Cruel Claw and Bubble Flower and Itali rocking these top tables for sure. We have the Kean Conley Memorial Tournament, which was won by a Malcolm Tana deck, a deck that a lot of people thought was, myself included, taking a bunch of losses here for this tournament. But we have a 4-0-3 record here from our winning player with this Malcolm Tana list. We got D-Train up in here with the Thrasios Timna top 4 with 2 Rogsais in the top 4 as well. We have a 5th place Kark Sakashima run in the new meta, 2 Kenons up in here in these top tables, a Crom Timna, Bjorna Wernog, which I think we're going to see a couple lists from Bjorna Wernog over the things. I'm curious to see if this curious to see what this particular Bjorna Wernog does. I'm assuming it's just kind of like it's just Blue's Clues, so like the 4-color mid-range variant, often associated with Eric DeVoe. Very much a classic version of this deck. A lot of is this alphabetically sorted? It is. So the 4-color, basically the hybrid between Rogsai and Blue Farm is kind of what you get when you look at this archetype. Very low to the ground, breach focused, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're seeing here with this Blue's Clues variant here in this top cut. Want to shout out one of our sponsors for this episode, Heavy Play. Heavy Play has been an awesome partner to work with, and we are continuing to work with them through to the end of the year. They have a lot of good new stuff coming. We just had an awesome meeting, and I want to thank all of you out in the audience for supporting this channel by using our code Comedian over at heavyplay.com, which you can check the link down below, get a percentage off your order. It's been awesome. Heavy Play is super happy working with us here at the channel, and the products are awesome. I love using Heavy Play products. I have one of the deck boxes literally sitting right next to me here. This deck box has been through several tournaments with me. I love their magnet function, all of this stuff. The Heavy Play products are super high quality. They have stuff for 60-card players. They have stuff for cEDH players. In general, want to shout out the cEDH players. If you want to use your double sleeve decks, check out the 133 card size boxes for the Heavy Play boxes. But they have awesome playmats, awesome deck boxes, a ton of awesome products. Check it out. And once again, use that code Comedian to get a 20% off your first order. Pretty cool. Got another Magda here, some more Kenons, right? So we're definitely starting to see some decks that are still performing well. We've got a Rafine Scheming Seer here in 15th place, as well as a Minskin Boo, or actually just Minsk, Beloved Ranger, the Protein Hulk variant, which is kind of cool. I'm very interested to see the Rafine list, kind of interesting Esper sort of grindy stuff. You can put Malevolent Hermits in the graveyard to make your stuff uncounterable. That part's pretty sweet. Reanimator lines with Abdel Adrian, even though you don't have an outlet in the command zone, you sort of set up the Reanimator loop. Same thing with Razaketh here. So definitely a graveyard focused list here. Consign to Memory is one that I keep hearing people whispers here and there about this card maybe being more playable than it previously was. Kind of interesting as a concept. I'd be curious to see if that's actually a thing moving forward. But a very interactive deck here with this Rafine list, and then not too much in the Artifact Acceleration package. A lot of Reanimator style stuff, which we kind of expected given the rest of the deck. And then some control pieces here in Esper. Resmer are definitely very aggressively trying to put stuff in the graveyard with this list. So really cool Reanimator deck we're seeing here in the top pot of this tournament. And also shout out to our pilot Micah here with a Grixis run with Kess. Kess, a list that folks have kind of moved away from the current metagame. Really cool synergies here with Displacer Kitten, able to reset your Kess over and over again, basically making it so that if you have a cat plus Kess, you have a free Yawgmoth's Will coming out of the graveyard for your whole turn, which is pretty sweet. Then you have a bunch of control pieces here, right? Classic Grixis package with a few more higher end control pieces like Mana Drain and stuff like that. And then the rest of it's just kind of doing the Grixis stuff, Adnaz and Breach Lines and all that kind of normal thing with Kess. So Kess, cool to see this commander at the face of a Grixis deck, though, has been sort of quiet in the metagame for quite some time. And this is the one I attended this very weekend, where I did not do very well because I brought Balin. This is the Spookdia 2K cEDH over at Kings Court. Kings Court, a lovely store that I frequently attend because it's up in Massachusetts, and it's really, really awesome to go up there. Can't shout out that store enough. But this one won by a Glarb deck, which was very, very cool. Glarb, a very interesting commander, to say the least. We were talking about a very interesting Sultai list here with this tournament. One of the main win conditions being Hullbreaker Horror, using some wheel lines with Thief and Shoulder of the Apocalypse, but actually no wheels to pay it off. So really just actually draw hate in this deck. We have Seaborn Muse to, you know, a bunch of, you're going to see a bunch of 4s from this deck that are going to be able to cast off the top of your library. You actually have Thrasios in the 99 of this deck as one of the outlets potentially for your deck, as well as Kenon, doing the same thing here if you make Infinite Mana with something like a Hullbreaker Horror. You have your classic Thassa's Oracle win lines. There's no turbo kind of outlets with this deck, right? Where we have no Adnaz, no Bolus of Citadel, stuff like that. You do have Necro in this deck, which sort of becomes like a weird Bolus of Citadel with Glarb, because you can cast stuff off the top of your library, and then Glarb also allows you to sort of sculpt, put some cards in the graveyard. You got Agatha's Soul Cauldron here to give you a little bit of that graveyard recursion. Sensei's Top, which helps with the whole Glarb plan in general. And then a lot of this like 4-mana interaction here, right? Because yeah, you can cast them off the top with your commander. Intuition, very interesting inclusion for this list to sort of select your graveyard very aggressively. And the rest of it is like a lot of Sultai good value stuff. So Glarb able to take down the 64-player tournament, which is a pretty unique list. So it's like not exactly straightforward what the plan is with the deck very often. But oh yeah, I also should mention that Flood Caller is actually a combo with Glarb, in a sense, because every non-creature allows you to untap your commander, which then allows you to surveil 2 over and over again. Very much controlling and sculpting the top of your library, which is a really cool interaction. But very cool, quirky Glarb list taking down this tournament for sure. We have this unknown list here. I was at this event and did find out that was a Kenon deck. Shout out to Lucas in the top 4 of this tournament, who is playing Yisan, a much forgotten deck, and a deck that many considered to be straight up dead. Yet here we have Yisan in the new meta, things slowing down a little bit, but also helped a lot by brand new Duskmourn printing, Marvin the Murderous Mimic. This card is so good for Yisan. It adds a bunch of different lines because you're able to tutor it in with Yisan and then have Marvin basically be ready to go as soon as it loses summoning sickness, whether through artificial means or otherwise, right? So double Yisan, very good thing to be able to throw in for this deck, absolutely. You want to win with the Ashaya lines with this deck. Ashaya is still a pretty big piece of this list, able to combo off of things like Argothian Elder, make infinite green mana, and then go up the Yisan train, as Yisan will also be a forest if you have Ashaya out, and therefore you can get just an escalation of Yisan activations as you go up the chain. Really sweet stuff there. You can win with infinite cast of Infectious Bite, which is going to poison your opponents to death. A lot of cool mono green interactions, some disruptive pieces, things like Null Rod, Vex, and Bauble Trinisphere, all that kind of stuff. Root Maze, a classic Yisan staple, and a good old 29 lands to round things out. But really cool to see Lucas out here playing Yisan and taking it to the top tables. Flare Cultivation, cool stuff here. Was not expecting to see a Flare Cultivation, but yeah, I guess if you need it for the ramp plan, might as well, right? Sweet stuff here from Yisan. Really cool and very interesting to see a much forgotten about deck make a top cut here. We've got Rogsai in the top pod. We have Rog Thras in the top pod as well, or right outside the top pod, I should say. Rog Thras, you know, taking the loss of Dockside pretty well. They still have the Kenon lines in there and a bunch of other stuff. Seeing a lot of Francisco Thrasios in conversations with folks. This is the first one I saw actually make the top cuts in these first couple weeks. But interesting deck to note. We have a Stella Lee here. Definitely cool to note. We have a Wise Moth Man up in this top pod. Wise Moth Man, a card people talked about when it first came out, but not one we've seen a whole ton of. This is definitely a mid-range food chain Mothman list, right? We have food chain here, and then a lot of like mid-range pieces, things like Animate Dead to get things out of your graveyard, the Amphibian Downpour, which now the Dockside is gone. This card has a lot less of a downside for sure. You have Mind Crank combos, I believe, with Bloodchief Ascension in the deck. Yeah, absolutely. Already kind of working well because you're trying to milk stuff with your commander anyways, and any sort of inadvertent extra mill stuff definitely helps Mothman get big. Kind of surprised to not see a Mesmeric Orb in here because that card makes Mothman get huge very, very quickly. Some really interesting control pieces here. I've never seen a Back to Nature in a cEDH deck, but honestly, that's probably a card people are sleeping on a little bit if you're worried about the Rhystic Mystic meta. You have Demonic Constellation and Tainted Pact here to work with your Thassa's Oracle in the 99. You have a Dread Return line here, which is, are you playing Hermit Druid? You are. Okay, so this is a Hermit Druid list too, which is pretty cool. Definitely a piece we have not seen in quite some time either. Moth Man just milling its whole library, getting a big moth, and then dropping the Thoracle back on the table is pretty sweet. Another list on Eternal Scourge, but not in Mist Griffin, which is kind of fun and fascinating. And then we have Danny Pink here, which is creatures have whenever one or more counters are put on this creature for the first time each turn, draw a card. So the way that the rad counters work for Mothman, there's a solid chance that you're getting a free card every single turn when you have this and your commander out and doing the thing. So really cool to see this grindy mid-range Mothman list take the top 16 of this tournament. Sweet stuff here. We have another Malcolm list, Malcolm Vile here. We have Roxanne in 12th place, another Sisay, right? So like, some of these decks that we were a little worried about are still making results, right? Sisay is not exactly crushing the top tables with these tournaments, but they're still there. Crom Timna's still here too. We have CJ. We got to talk about CJ's Rakdos Lord of Riots list. We've talked about this in the Massachusetts meta and how CJ has been consistently performing with this deck for tournaments. I'm not going to go into this one too deep because I am planning on having CJ on here for an in-depth deck tech of this deck. And as I'm scrolling through, you can see the craziness that this deck has. But we're going to have CJ on here and we're going to talk about this deck. So that's just a matter of time. And we'll save a lot of that for the conversations with CJ where I can make more informed commentary because we'll have the actual deck builder here to talk about all the craziness that is this Rakdos Lord of Riots deck. Here we have the GGAZ cEDH event, which was won by Roco, a deck that we all thought was dead. Yeah, I guess I didn't need Dockside overall, or after all, was the description of this video. But this is a Dockside list Roco. This is a Roco that fully uses the ability of Arena Rector and Academy Rector to be able to sacrifice those and then go up the Kiki pod line. So you're either using Vivian on the hunt to sack Roco, go up and do the whole Felidar into Karmic Guide into Kiki thing, or you have your sack outlets here with all these cards, or you're doing the Academy Rector stuff. An Academy Rector can get you it's not even on Survival of the Fittest. Wow, fascinating. Even though they're on those lines, that's kind of crazy. But Academy Rector can get you your food chain, right? So like that's your other win, which obviously you can then convert the food chain to sack Roco to be able to recast Roco to try and get enough mana to be able to grab the Squee in your deck and then go infinite with food chain there too. So Roco apparently alive and well. No need for Dockside here. We just are sacking Rectors and moving on with our life. This is pretty sweet to see that Roco did not die. I always thought it was a really cool deck. And so like having it not just fully eat it was kind of nice. Wondering if the Jolly Balloon Man will make its way into this deck, seeing it's already a deck that kind of wins with Village Bell Ringer. So like that'd be an interesting inclusion to the list moving forward. And I'm surprised it's not in here because it's kind of doing a lot of the same stuff that the rest of this list is doing. But yeah, sweet to see Roco take down a whole event. Not only just make top cut after losing one of its best pieces, but straight up take the whole thing down. Sweet stuff here from Roco for sure. We got Thrasios here. This is our you might have noticed this is our top 16 list from one of the other tournaments, the one I had mentioned and highlighted earlier, because this was 2 weeks apart. Our player here with our Rog Thras post ban list still putting up results with this archetype and doing pretty well with it. So clearly Rog Thras lost a little bit of momentum, but not enough to keep it out of the top table. We do have a Tivit here again, another Sisay. We'll talk about some of the stuff in Sisay post ban list, right? Still doing a bunch of the same stuff, but messing around with new Marvin lines, still has the Derevi Emil stuff, but also working a lot more with like backup combos like Felidar, using things like Gigantha to go down the combo train, and a lot more focus on getting some of these faster lines, as well as fully leaning into using the Chromatic Orrery lines with Cultist of the Absolute, moving up to Dihada, then grabbing Chromatic Orrery, which was always kind of seen as a debatable inclusion in Sisay of the past, but now we're seeing it a little more succinctly added because, hey, we lost our Dockside, so the artifacts having haste is kind of the idea here, taking precedent, right? So we have Olivia Mobilizer War and Jolly Blue Man. There's also lines with Ioreth of the Healing House, which kind of new to the deck. They've been around since Lord of the Rings, right? But yeah, so definitely a different take on Sisei, you know, playing things as deep as Goro Goro, Disciple of Ryusei for a haste enabler, but maybe not necessarily needed as to go that deep into the combo. But hey, Sisei able to make top 4 with post ban world. This was the event right after the ban. So you know, top 4 right after the ban is pretty good for Sisei, absolutely. You know, we gotta shout out a top 16 Winota performance. Winota in this list, you know, using some interesting hate pieces here, right? Trying out the Null Rod Stony Sounds package, which I'd messed around with in the past with Winota, but now, you know, without Dockside and Jewel Lotus and Mana Crypt to really punish us for not using those, kind of can get away with playing them more easily. We have the High Noon addition to the deck. We are on a 32 land Winota, which is, if you're on Stony and Null Rod, makes a lot of sense. You have touch and stuff like that as your disruptive pieces. You got the new Flare of Fortitude to protect your stuff, and uncounterable split second Siege Smasher, super sweet from that angle. A lot of humans here, and a lot of humans with crazy ETB abilities. We are on Kiki lines in this variant with Jolly Balloon Man, Village Bellringer, all that kind of stuff. We're on Alexios, Myrel, Wandering Rescuer, definitely a newer Winota inclusion that I've seen in the past. Very interesting stuff here. Can protect your Winota. And I did actually shout this out on the Duskmorn set release. I was like, I might be cooking too hard here, but this might be worth playing in Winota. And here we have a Winota list with it. You got the Magus of the Moon, brand new, upgraded, new for the meta. Magus of the Moon, and then a lot of big stuff in Winota targets. So, you know, I'm happy as pie to see Winota make a top cut, and I hope she continues doing so, because that would be really, really cool. We got a shout out BZ here from the Nitpicking Nerds making a top 16 cut, which is very cool. BZ has this cEDH Carador variant, and I know he has like multiple Carador decks, like budget decks and, you know, cEDH versions and all that kind of stuff. So Carador is like his very much passion project. And here we have Protean Hulk Carador way back to 2015 Magic, right? But here it is, like doing Protean Hulk lines, winning with, I believe, the Cauldron Familiar and Samwise lines. Yep, Samwise Gamgee, able with the sack outlet to loop Familiar over and over again. And the rest of this is good old Abzan crunchy value stuff. Really cool here. A few stacks pieces to disrupt your opponents, you know, things like Deafening and things like that. But this is like Abzan Tempo Hulk, like full old school Abzan Tempo Hulk from yeah, the Nitpicking Nerds BZ. So congrats BZ. This is super cool to see you make the deep run with this list. Also, shout out to Wesley here with the Zur list. Speaking of old decks, we got the Posty Zur up in here. Really cool stuff. We have Heliod Ballista lines, which, for those who don't know, some Zur decks over the past couple of years have started playing Heliod Ballista because you just need to get Ballista in hand because you can tutor up Heliod with Zur, which is kind of fun. You got the Flash enablers here. A lot of stuff here. Is this going to be a Necro and Necrodom? No, just Necropotence in this Zur list. We have Unlife here for those deep ad nos runs, Necropotence for your value, Blood Chief as a grindy piece here. I think this card is picking up momentum in cEDH in general, and I'm starting to see more and more decks on that card. 12 artifacts, you know, not maybe the most explosive Zur list. A lot of the classic old school 2-mana interaction. You know, I don't want to call mandated piece old school interaction, but things like Delay, Mana Drain, Limb Duel's Vault, all that kind of stuff. Some Sheoldred's Edicts here. So definitely a more slow to the ground, controlling Zur list, but as our list that's also able to turn the corner. Really, I call it slow and controlling, but there's a culling the week in here too, right? So this list is definitely doing a little bit of double dipping in multiple realities. But Esper, Grindy, Zur, really cool to see make a top cut here. Then we have Yuriko, which is definitely a deck to talk about. We've got another Kenons, some Sisseis, Rog Thras, right? Rog Sai. So, you know, we're definitely still seeing some of these other decks. Also, note an Ob deck did make top cut. So Ob is not fully out of it for sure. We got a Crom Timna, some more Kenons, some Rog Sais down here in the, you know, some Thrasios Timnas. So definitely a little bit of meta diversity. We love to see it. Then we got last list. We definitely got a shout out. It's Jesse Feliciano here with Brutal Force stacks. This is a Bruce Tarl Kamal stacks deck. So just doing the Naya stack stuff. I shouted this one out on the Mind Sculptors, but the description of this deck list makes me laugh so hard. I love it. This is a brutal stacksy, mid-rangey kind of thing. This is, you know, you're playing oofs and Hushbringer effects and Containment Priests and Katakis. Like, this is really hard murder stacks. This is real lockdown nonsense, and able to make a top 16 with this very, very grindy, oppressive stacks deck. So sweet job, Jesse, and nice job making the top cut. One of the other tournaments I talked about last week was the Rip and Ship cEDH 1K. We're not going to talk about it again because I covered the top 16 in last week's episode. So feel free to synthesize some of that data and bring it into this one as well. And then the other two from this very weekend. So we had Battle of the Brazos, which was a Texas-based tournament. We have a bunch of different lists up here. We have Sisay, Weatherlight Captain, up in here. Another one. We got two Tivit decks. So Tivit is starting to make more and more of these top 16 cuts. We have Temujin here with an Emil deck, which I think is super, super interesting. This is just, Emil as a combo deck, right? You have some Vivian lines, I'm assuming, or it might just be a value Vivian pod kind of thing. Cool stuff here with like Knight of the Reliquary and Renegade Rallier and stuff like that. We've got some Preston the Vanish Alliance, which I'm assuming has something to do with the Vivian. We've got initiative creatures here that can be flickered with Emil. You got some crazy Reanimator stuff here with Karmic Eye, which once again, it feels like it's a Vivian thing. You have a Shy Alliance, which does also work with your commander, but specifically Village Bellringer is the one most known for this. You can also have Felidar Guardian and a Gaia's Cradle. A bunch of different ways to use Emil's activated ability to get a bunch of value, especially these initiative creatures, right? You're slowing things down a little bit with the rest of your deck. And then if you're able to just, manually activate initiative over and over again with your Emil, it starts to add up after a while and get you a ton of value. We have Chancellor of the Annex as a proactive stacks piece here with this list. Pretty cool stuff there. We got a bunch of different ways to get a Gaia's Cradle. We have pod lines, as we mentioned earlier. Concordant Crossroads, able to give some of your creatures haste. We love to see a Lurking Predators in the cEDH deck. That stuff's super, super sweet. Earthcraft helps with the Emil lines, which is pretty nice as well. So a lot of spicy stuff here with this Emil deck, and really cool to see this spicy green-white commander do the thing. We got some Magdas here, some more Rog Thras, Atraxa kind of coming back up. We got another unknown list classic. And we have an Ob in the top 4, which is super nice. We have Kinnan, Timna Crom, Timna Thrasios, right? So definitely seeing some of the, consistent performers in the format show up, but none of them are being dominant, right? Like, it's not like this whole thing is filled with Rogsire, or Timna Croms, or Timna Thras, right? There's a lot of stuff all over the place in these top cuts. We have Magdas, we have Tivits, we have Timna Thras, Timna Crom, we got some Rogsize up here in these top cuts, right? But there's nothing that is so aggressively dominating. Also, shout out to Wounded Satellite for his first big tournament Kinnan win, which is, he's done a lot of top cuts with that deck before, but he's never gotten the big win before on it. So congrats there. Cool stuff here. We have Obnx here in the top 4, right? So Obnx was once again a deck people were scared is not going to do the thing, but here we have it. No dockside to be seen, as that would be, technically not allowed, but a lot of pingers here for this Ob list, not saying, going a little bit less into the I can't even say less than the Super Turbo. This is a 25 land Necropotence, Bolsa Citadel, Ad Naz style Ob list, like still doing Rakdos Turbo stuff. Also doing the Turbo Ping game plan. You have things like Molten for the dual caster lines here. Glaring Fleshraker, really cool addition here. But yeah, just another Ob pinger if you have a bunch of colorless stuff to be casting in this deck. So Ob still alive and well in the cEDH meta and still putting up wins with this list too. And then a lot of cool stuff here from this top 16, but nothing like not nothing, but less very surprising things. Shout out also to Freedom Waffle, who didn't make the top cut but played Shorikai, which I know he's liked this deck quite a lot for a long time. Just kind of fun to see. Is this also the same Cruel Claw list? Because I know 2 of these tournaments were for Texas. Yeah, this is the same 91 card Cruel Claw list. Still, not too off the 27th place, able to get a couple wins and some draws and stuff. So Cruel Claw still doing the thing. We'll love to see it. And then we're over on Spice Rack because that's where they're hosting the SCG events nowadays. And we have our top 16 from the SCG cEDH 5K, which I believe, if I'm not crazy, I know this is very bright and I apologize. I hope that there's a dark mode available somewhere at some point, but this is the top 16 from that tournament. A lot of quirky decks here for this one, right? We have Archetype Missing here, which I'm pretty sure this was a Timna Crom deck that won the whole thing, unless I'm super crazy. Oh no, this was Godo, right? Yeah, the whole thing was won by Godo. What am I talking about? For some reason, it's not putting the commander in some of these decks. Yeah, but Godo wins SCG DC, right? A deck that lost Jewel Lotus and Mana Crypt and Dockside, right? But still wins the whole thing. So apparently there were a lot of very cool stuff. There was an awesome interview on Mental Misplay's channel with our Godo pilot here, but really sweet to see Godo absolutely saying thank you. I'll have another after the bans, and just saying, yeah, we're gonna crush this whole thing with Godo. So super cool to see Godo win an entire tournament, even in the face of losing 3 very important pieces here for this deck. We do have 5 ROG size in the top cut of this specific event, which doesn't surprise me a lot. I feel like SEGs are a really good environment for turbo decks like ROG Sai. We have another archetype missing here, but I believe this was a Timnacrom list. Yeah, so this is just a blue farm list. Tried and true. See what the artifact count is here for this one. This is a 12 artifact, including Mox Opal. These blue farm pilots, y'all crazy. Sweet stuff there. So Timnacrom doing a little bit of stuff. Tivit up here in the top cuts. We have Tyam, which was a deck people were talking about, but not playing a lot of, which makes sense. Tyam's a really hard deck to just sort of pick up out of nowhere. We have a Cecily Elmar list, which I'm pretty sure is the Sans Blue combination. No, Cecily Elmar. This is Sans White. Whoa. Okay, so this is also known as 11 and Max. Is this just like a turbo deck? Okay. So this is Sans White Turbo, but using the Stranger Things pairings instead of the either going like Crom, Ikra, Crom, Rayhan, or Thrasios Vile Smasher, which I'm so curious to hear why our pilot here went with that combination instead. It's very fascinating to me. I think it's pretty sweet. I wonder if it's just a like style points type of inclusion, or if there were any particular specific intricacies about using these commander pairs instead of the standard pairs. Cool stuff here though, for sure. 27 land Turbo Nas deck here out of this Cecily Elmar variant. Shout out to our we have yeah, as mentioned, some blue farms, rock size, Timna Thras. We have Queen Kayla Bin Krug by Taylor Cobble. This is Boros Stacks. I think this is a commander that I've heard people say in the past was like, this product should probably do more than we've ever seen it do. But here we have it in the top 16 of this SEG, doing some, very classic Boros Stack stuff. Marvin, another card that's like adding to these archetypes. We're seeing more and more Marvin decks as time goes on. Cool stuff here. Got some Brawl-in synergies by burning people out by tapping your commander. No Jolly Balloon Man, another thing with the Village Bellringer combo. And yeah, as we mentioned earlier, but there's Village Bellringer Kiki Jiki stuff. Zerda making your commander cost cheaper. And I guess, is there a Basalt or a Grim Monolith in here? There is Basalt Monolith in here. Oh, okay. So you can do like infinite colorless Rings of Bright Hearth or Zerda into Staff of Domination lines. There's an Alhamra's archive because you're now pitching things and drawing twice that many cards with your commander, as well as bringing things back. A Mycosynth Lattice, which is there Karn in here? Yeah, so you have Karn Mycosynth to just shut off everyone's stuff, and there's no more Dockside to punish you for playing crazy cards like Mycosynth Lattice, which is super wild. We have Chance for Glory and Glorious Ends. Is there 3-mana Gideon? No, there's no 3-mana Gideon, but there's an Angel's Grace in here. So I guess just some risky extra turns. Yeah, we love to see it. We love to see it. It's a lot of stacks pieces here in this deck. Filter for infinite mana, wild, crazy stuff. And there's Breach Lines in a deck playing High Noon. Hell yeah. I like this is a wild list. And congrats to our pilots for top 16ing with a roller coaster of a deck list. This does crazy stuff, and it's super sick to see. Also crazy that this deck can win under the 80-minute time periods. We love to see it. We're really wild. Got more Sisseys here. Sissey's still alive and well, once again, post-ban. Yeah, we got to talk about the fact that Saurin of House Markov is a top 16 deck here. This is the Saurin from Modern Horizons 3. At the beginning of your post-combat main, I got to read this because I don't even know, because it's an extort ability. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you gain 3 more life. You flip it, and then you can +2 to make a food. -1 equals it deals damage equal to the amount of life you gain to any target. And then -6, gain control of a creature. It becomes a vampire, and you get a lifelink counter on it. Yeah, I do not know. And I guess you have extort in the command zone, but this is a wild deck. I'm not really sure how you're like, there's Bomberman combo present in the deck, but your commander isn't an outlet for these things. Oh, no, it is because you have extort. Okay, so yeah, Bomberman allows you to use the extort on your commander over and over again at the low cost of pitching your hand. So you're able to do that. I guess there's some Entomb shenanigans in here. This is a Bolus of Citadel Aetherflux Reservoir list. I had a feeling that Aetherflux Reservoir would be a card I would see in this deck. A lot of like grindy black-white stuff in here. Very little interaction in the sense, traditional sense, right? You have some silences, a lot of proactive things like Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, all that kind of stuff. Very aggressive, proactive, turbo. Yeah, this is wild. This list is another roller coaster of a list to see here. But I mean, one of the things to mention is like decks like these are performing in this. I mean, how many spicy decks have I talked about since I've started covering this video, right? And I've talked about the Timnachroms and the Timnathrases and the Rog Thrases, and they're all there, but they're all not completely dominating these tournaments. I mean, Godo won the whole thing. So like, yeah, Rogside did well in this particular event, but also so did, you know, Bjorna Wernog and Tyam and Saurin of House Markov, right? So really crazy stuff here from this top 16. And this is yet another tournament. And we talked about we talked about 8 here today, right? Or 7 maybe. Because one of them was actually a smaller tournament that I thought. But so many crazy decks here from these tournaments, and to me this is such a good sign. CEDH is healthy. I mean, I covered 7 events here today, and I could not tell you that one deck is dominating the whole thing. There are definitely decks that are doing well, like Timnachrom is still alive. Timnathras is still top 16ing is starting to top 16 more and more. Rogthras doing very well. Rogside doing very well in specific events, but not in others, right? So here we have this wide, diverse meta where a lot of decks are being played, and I'm super happy about it. And I think this is a really good sign for CEDH. I'm going to get off this super bright page now. Woo! Okay, but yeah, this is awesome. I love seeing this stuff. I think CEDH is in a super healthy place post-ban, and honestly, it's kind of going better than I ever thought it was going to be. And yeah, it's super exciting stuff. Want to remind you while we're getting here towards the end of the video, I do provide CEDH coaching. If that is something you're interested in, you can hit me up at comedianmtg@gmail.com. You can find me over on Discord at comedian_MTG. I want to say that again. It's comedian_MTG on Discord. Someone else has the comedian MTG username, unfortunately. And then on Twitter and Instagram, it's just at comedian MTG. All those things are in the description down below. However, if you want any of that information, coaching's been going awesome. I've been working with so many people on this post-ban format, and I'm super excited to be doing more stuff. And CEDH is it's in such a good place right now. I'm so excited to continue playing CEDH. It's been really, really fun, and there's a lot of stuff to explore. People are bringing out their wild decks. They're definitely trying a ton of new crazy things, and I'm so curious to see what's going to come out of next week's tournaments, because the things that have come out of this week's and the week before have genuinely blown me away. And there's been stuff we're used to, right? Like, it's not like all the old decks just exploded and went out, aren't existing anymore, but there's also new things, there's innovative things, there's stuff to try everywhere, and I'm so excited for it. So thank you all for watching this video. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.